Hi everyone, I'm Christopher Reyes and welcome to a new Lark TV series called Artist Spotlight, where I sit down with a Lark community member to get to know them a little bit better. Today we are being joined by last season's Global Exchange Apprentice and my favorite Gemini, Moriya.
Hey Lark TV!
So Mona, thank you so much for joining me. This is the very first episode,
Yay.
And you're my very first guest. So do you feel honored?
Yeah, so honored. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I just want to get to know you a little bit better. Well, I know you, but I want our Lark community to know you a little bit better. But you are a California native.
Yes.
Where were you born?
I'm from Los Angeles.
LA.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get started in theater?
Well, I got started in theater because when I was in 5th grade, my mom transferred me to this kind of small private school in Santa Monica, which is a more affluent community near my place. But it was, a private school. I'd never gone to private school before, and it was pretty pricey, but I got a scholarship. And at the school, you were required to take theater as a class. And so before then, I never imagined myself as a theatrical person. I was just kind of more introverted, and I liked reading books a lot. So then once I took this class when I was 10, it just kind of totally blew my mind. It was the first time that I felt kind of alive and not so shy and not so timid anymore. Miss Lori was my teacher, and she just took me under her wing and put me in everything and let me play Glinda. And literally, in Wicked, which is felt like something I couldn't do when I was 10. I was oh, I'm Asian, I can't be Glinda, but she let me play Glinda. So I haven't stopped theater since.
And your point of access was primarily acting?
Yes, primarily acting, yeah.
And then you went to school at Emerson?
Yes, I did.
For undergrad. And how was that like?
Yeah, I got my BFA from Emerson, graduated class of 2017, so a little over a year ago. And, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do when I was 17 and applying to colleges. I knew that I loved doing theater. I did all the school productions and took all the drama classes at my high school, so it made a lot of sense to go in that direction. But I wasn't quite sure if I really wanted to pursue acting for a lot of reasons, one of them being, monetary reasons and the fact that I am a woman of color. But I kind of went and, I auditioned for a bunch of schools and was just kind of see what would happen. And I had some backup schools, liberal arts colleges that I'd gone into. So I wasn't quite sure, but then, I got into my top 2 choices, NYU and Emerson, and Emerson just felt like the right choice for a lot of reasons, one of them being that it was really small, and that I was also a liberal arts college, so I could do my BFA track, but I also could take classes in a bunch of different things. So it felt like it really fit me, and I feel like BFA programs are traumatic and wonderful at the same time. And I'm really grateful because I met a lot of people who identified as other things besides actors, and I knew for myself in my core that's who I am and who I was. And I was able to do that at Emerson, take all these courses, whether it was arts management and playwriting, or a class on Islam, or classes on racial identity and racial issues. So that kind of informed the kind of work that I was doing. And,
And now you are kind of leaning outside acting now as well. You are the GM assistant at Playwrights Realm. I know you're also dabbling with producing. So what was the process for you to kind of shift away from acting and leaning more into other things?
Yeah, senior year I took arts management at Emerson, and one of our projects was that we had to kind of create our own kind of fake theater company as our final project, and we had to come up with a mission statement, had to come up with a budget, come up with a season, we had to do a whole thing. And for my project, I created an Asian American theater company based in Boston, because there is no Asian American theater in Boston, and so while I was doing that project, I was wait, I'm really enjoying creating this budget for this season. I'm enjoying picking plays and giving reasons as to why I wanted it for the season, and being able to have a lot of say in the casting choices. It just felt like a lot of fun for me to do. And I knew my senior year of college that I was going to apply to the Lark no matter what, and that was actually the only job I applied to, which is a little bit insane, especially for me, who I feel like I try to be very careful and really make sure I do the things I need to do and take all the right steps. But that was the one thing where I was wow, I'm really playing with fire right now.
You Gemini'd it.
Yeah, I literally Gemini'd it. And I just had this feeling like in my bones that like I had to be at the Lark, that this was the only apprenticeship that I wanted to apply to. No other theater had an apprenticeship that really felt like it was right for me. And so I kind of got into producing, you know, from senior year, and also I did a lot of producing-esque things with student theater at Emerson. I was a part of a Women of Color theater troupe, Flawless Brown, which is now Women of Color Artists Collective, and we did it out of necessity. We created our own thing because people weren't casting us, and we wanted to not only, you know, be on stage, but I actually wanted to have some kind of influence in what was being done, and I knew that I had skills in budgeting, and that I knew I could be very organized, and that I liked being able to, you know, just have a part in uplifting other people's stories. Like, it wasn't just about me being on stage. And yeah, and so that's kind of what I've been doing this past year and a half, especially since coming to New York, doing, you know, assisting producers for the Global Exchange program here, and working in GM and producing at Playwrights Realm with Celine, the general manager, and Roberta, the producing director, and then also assisting Kathy and Jimmy, who is known for acting, but she also produces and directs now mainly. So yeah, I've been kind of trying to like balance everything. I wouldn't say I don't identify as an actor anymore. Yeah. I think it's just a part of my artistic identity. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't consider my job at Playwrights Realm like a day job. Like, it's a part of who I am. And same with acting, it's not like a side gig. It's like, oh no, this is also a part of me. But yeah. Yeah,
so you recently had a piece go up at the Flea as part of Flea Fridays, and you wrote and kind of devised that piece, and you also performed in it. So it's called Some Oriental Shit.
Yes.
So we've been kind of hovering around the your identity as an Asian American woman. So let's talk a little bit about that piece and what inspired it.
Yeah, so I'm a part of the Bats at the Flea, which is their resident acting company, and I've been there since June. And they opened a call out for anyone to submit to Flea Fridays, which is essentially kind of like a cabaret-esque kind of exploratory theater night where artists can submit different ideas and different projects. It can be anything from, you know, a scene or a monologue or a performance art piece. And I knew that I wanted to somehow submit something that felt like was exploring the space that was being used. And we did it in the P at the Flea, which is like they have an inside part of this kind of space, but there's also an outside portion where you can see from inside through the windows, and I was interested in, you know, being able to watch
the voyeurism.
Yeah, the voyeuristic kind of aspect of that room. So I submitted my piece, Some Oriental Shit, which is
hashtag
Some Oriental Shit, and I was fascinated by these really explicit Reddit posts, which is kind of insane. Like, once you get, like, the dark world of Reddit is insane. Yeah. And I was looking at these threads where white men were talking about Asian women in a really derogatory, explicit way. I can't even go into detail right now because it's just so inappropriate, but I was interested in taking that back somehow, which is why I came up with the idea of being able to explore these Reddit posts through performance art piece. And so what I did was I had myself and another bat who's also Asian, Tara Tan, who's really great. And essentially we're doing a ritual outside as the audience watches from the window with traditional Japanese music. And I had these Reddit posts printed out and pasted on traditional Japanese origami paper that was passed out to every audience member. As audio of this Reddit post was being heard, and I had various actors read, and you also read some of the Reddit posts. And
as a white guy?
As a white guy, yeah. I had like some white dudes read, and yeah, it was, I really wanted the audience to kind of question their own racial biases and whether or not they identified with anything that was being said in this piece. And the question that we were exploring for that round of Flea Fridays was, how color brave are you? And that's curated by the artistic director Nigel Smith and resident director Michael Rain. And my piece in particular was directed by Rand Shaw, who's also a resident director there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. I think a lot of people laughed, I think, out of being really uncomfortable. And I think with the stuff that I like to do is I'm interested in making people uncomfortable a little bit, because asking really tough questions, and that's what I do in my piece. And it was about 5 to 7 minutes, so I don't know what I'll do with it past this Flea Fridays. I don't know if I'll do it again somewhere else, but yeah, I loved it. I loved it a lot.
And I think for that piece, like, there's that question of, like, again, like the white gaze, right? I think that's something that we have talked about in sort of our writing and our work, and that, like, how do we call that out without it being present or without it being the main entry point for people to
Yeah.
learn pieces.
Yeah,
So can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about like weighing that?
Yeah, it's a hard thing because like I want to be able to create art that really centers Asian people and Asian women and you know, just people of all backgrounds, especially dealing with Asian identity. And it's hard because I don't want to center whiteness in it,
Yeah.
but to say that white supremacy
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. It would
Yeah.
it would be a lie, and that
Yeah.
hasn't affected why I create art would be, you know, like not true. So I think with that piece, I really wanted it to kind of have this like zoo-like installation where the audience feels like, you know, the Asian women outside are the zoo, but in the end, at the end of the piece, we turn to the audience in a way to tell them like, you guys are the zoo.
You're acting like animals.
Yes,
Right.
you are the animals.
So sit with that.
Sit with that. That's what I was trying to do, and to kind of bring it back and take back all these things that have been said about Asian women to say like, yeah, we're gonna take it and throw it back at you, and you guys are actually the zoo.
And we talk about audiences a lot too when it comes to work, and I know that like your work would translate, how would that translate to like a Japanese audience, and how would it translate to like majority white American audience? Is that something you're still very conscious of, or is that something that you're like kind of going out of asking? Just...
Yeah, it was interesting because the Flea Fridays audience for my piece was majority POC, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, how do you guys feel about this? And yeah, it's complicated because I think my piece, like some Oriental shit, I don't know if that would sit well with Japanese audiences, because I think the kind of work that I like to do and that what sort of some Oriental shit is asking is not necessarily something that a lot of Japanese people are really diving into or talking about. And I'm speaking as a first generation Japanese American, and I'm sure this is different for other people, but for myself, I think, yeah, it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people, and I think for Japanese people too, and for other people of color who might feel like they have contributed to racism in some way, or at least white supremacy. And I think with my work, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I want to be able to make art and create theater that impacts everybody in some way. But I think at the end of the day, I want to create stuff for POCs.
Yeah.
And for Asian people. Yeah, and if white audiences can somehow connect to it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that's the people that are, you know, buying tickets.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that too, you know, who is paying for tickets and who are actually seeing these shows written by people of color that are being
Who can afford
produced.
tickets.
Yeah, who can afford tickets. So, you know, I hope that I'm able to do stuff that impacts everybody, but I ultimately will draw from my experiences as an Asian person no matter what. And, you know, if Asian people connect with it like that, it makes me the happiest.
And we're kind of talking around it too, but the idea of like a safe space, right? And I think that's something that like we have talked about, like that we kind of grapple with as young theater artists. It's like, A, how do we find the resources for us to create a safe space?
Yeah.
How do we find our own community, our own tribe? And then how do we create art in that space and not keep it insulated? So that's a whole lot of things I'm throwing at you. But
I know, it's hard because like you want to be able to impact people, but if your audience is, you know, primarily older and white and you don't know if they're going to be impacted, then it's a hard kind of thing to balance. I feel like if you can make like some little change, I feel like that's important. And this was, Thomas Bradshaw was saying this. I was in the workshop for Southern Promises at the Flea a few weeks ago, and his play, Southern Promises, is, you know, quite brutal because it's about slavery. It's because slavery is brutal and horrific. And he was saying, you know, even if just one audience member feels impacted in some way, like that's an incredible thing. That's amazing, and that means a lot. So I feel like for myself as an artist, if one person feels like they can connect in some way, if some Asian girl feels like, oh man, I can finally love myself just a little bit, that's amazing to me. And yeah, and I think every little thing matters.
Yeah. And I know you have sort of like pieces that you're still working on as well. Can we talk a little bit about those pieces?
Yeah, sure.
Which you've shared. Part of the apprenticeship at the Lark is that we do these things called apprentice roundtables, where the apprentices get to share a little bit of their own work, whether it be like a play or like a spoken word or an art, like a visual art piece
Yeah.
or performance art. It's open to anything, but basically we share pieces of our work. So last season you shared 2 pieces that I kind of want to talk about.
Yeah.
One is Wild Asian Girls, which is done, right, for the most part.
Yeah,
right?
for the most part, yeah.
And then Sweet Summer Sookie. But let's start with Wild Asian Girls and
Yeah.
delve deeper into. So what is Wild Asian Girls about?
Yeah, so Wild Asian Girls, I started writing it my senior year of college in playwriting 1 and 2 that I took in college, and the idea came the summer going into my senior year. I was at the Orchard Project doing an apprenticeship there, and it's like this residency program, and apprentices come and help various artists that come through the program there, and it's in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is so white. Like, so white.
Yeah.
And I grew up in LA, so I've always been around people of color like my entire life. I didn't really actually have to deal with so much whiteness around me until college, really.
Yeah.
And so I was in this upstate New York, and I was like, oh my God, I've only seen like 2 Asian people.
Including yourself.
Yeah, including myself.
In the mirror.
Yeah, literally. And I was passing by all these like, really nice homes and these houses, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. And I didn't grow up in a suburb, so I don't know what that's like, but I was like really fascinated by suburbia. And so this idea came while Asian Girls centers on these 3 young Asian American girls, Camilla, Lumi, and Nalani. And they do seances in their pastime. They conjure up dead people, and they are the only Asian girls in their town. And the death of a young half-black boy in their town kind of shakes up the entire community, and the blame is cast on these 3 girls who are kind of seen as very mysterious and exotic, and they're called witches. And so I was exploring this moment in time that they're going through with the death of this young boy. Yeah, I didn't know that was what I was going to be working on like all of my senior year. I was like kind of like, oh, I'll do this for a little bit and pick up a different play, which was Sweet Summer Sookie. But I decided to continue with that the whole year, and so I could have a full length when I graduated from college. Yeah, it was a really, really fun experience. I workshopped it a couple times. I did a reading here of it, and yeah, I'm like really, really proud to have like worked on that. I had a lot of fun working on it, and I'm really excited I got to share it in the round table here during my apprenticeship.
And it sort of has a lot of common themes as some Oriental shit, right?
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
Like how Asian women are viewed in like the dominant society in America specifically, but like it's that dichotomy of like I do not see you as a human being. Like I don't see you as a full human being.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to fetishize you and like turn you into like my sort of fantasy of like what I want and expect you to be.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about sort of how that manifests in your works as well?
Yeah, I have always been fascinated by that. My whole life I've been called exotic or mysterious or different by a lot of different people, and I'm like fascinated by that and like trying to unpack them the best way that I can, because there was this article that came out in the New York Times saying how Asians are like still not represented in film and television, and it's like this idea of like we're not Americans, so therefore they can't see us in this American kind of family or American idea. And that's also something that I really kind of grapple with in my own work, is like this idea of the American dream and who does it belong to? Who is it for, and how is it attainable? Is it even attainable? And I'm always interested in kind of unpacking and exploring the way Asian women are perceived in this like very submissive way, and trying to subvert that through my own work and in my own work as an actor, like in terms of choosing roles and monologues and things like that. It's an interesting thing. It's like, and it manifests in so many different parts of my life, not just in theater, but just working jobs and how I'm perceived, working at juice press as a cashier, like how do people treat me then? And, I'm like fascinated by it. And I'm also very fascinated by voyeurism. Yeah. It keeps coming back into my work over and over again. Yeah.
It's like the way you're seen and perceived.
Yeah, the way you're seen and perceived, and how we take that back or reclaim it.
Reclaim it. And Sweet Summer Sookie is still in progress, right?
It's still in progress. It's it kind of Well, the reason I came up with it was that I had read this article about the tsunami, the 2011 tsunami in Japan, and it was looking at it 5 years later. A New York Times writer went to the location where it happened and interviewed people and was looking particularly at this family who had lost their daughter, who worked at the bank there. And every morning, the mom, she makes food in this little bento box, and she floats it into the water every single morning because her body isn't found. A lot of people's bodies wasn't found. A lot of it has, I think, kind of washed away to the ocean. And the dad, he started taking diving lessons. And so every morning he wakes up and goes diving and searches for his daughter's body. And I was so moved by that, by this, these two parents, searching for their daughter. What exactly are they searching for? They're searching for answers. Do they believe that she's alive? I don't know. And so that kind of came about with Sweet Summer Sookie, where the main character Sookie is a reporter, and she's Japanese American, and her assignment is to go to the site of this tsunami and earthquake and interview people. And through it, she meets a woman named Zola who teaches English in Japan. And she kind of came about, I didn't really quite know what I wanted Zola to be, but I knew I also was interested in people who teach English in Japan. Yeah, it's like a fascinating thing that happens. I know it also happens in Korea. And Asian countries. Asian countries. And so Zola, she is a non-Japanese woman of color that I wanted. And I didn't really know what was going to happen with them, and I kind of kept writing it, and it kind of arrived at a place where these two characters kind of fall in love, these two women, and I didn't want to center oppression as queer women of color as the center of this. I just wanted to be that these two women met and they happened to be attracted to each other and they happened to fall in love. And I'm still trying to understand that and trying to see how these two characters come together. I shared, I think, most of Act 1 in the round table, and I'm working on Act 2, and it's been eye-opening to write it and to kind of explore my own identity as a queer Asian woman and how I want that talked about in my writing. And I'm definitely interested in talking about being queer and Asian American and Japanese, because homophobia is
it's real too.
It's rampant in Asia, and I know it is in Japan. And I just wanted to be this story where it wasn't really talking heavily about race or really anything. It was more just this reporter who is grappling with her identity as a first-generation Japanese American person and grappling with how much she's allowed to grieve for this thing that happened if she had no family really involved. Well, actually, you find out in the play that her father, who she never knew, passes away during the tsunami, and that's kind of the angle that she goes on, and this woman that she meets, that she has these kind of romantic feelings for, coming to fruition.
And I think that's something that's very interesting too. I think is as an Asian person or an Asian American person is how much of this history or how much of this narrative of this country that I call home but may not necessarily be home, how much of that can I claim? And I think that's something that you explore in this piece. It's like Sookie doesn't exactly know where she stands in this country in general, but also just in this devastation in this.
Yeah, because I think it also, when I was 15 when that tsunami happened, and I was very upset. All of my family lives in Japan except my parents, and it became this thing where I still had to wake up and go to school, and I was grieving, but my teachers are kind of like, oh, this horrible thing happened, but you gotta rehearse tonight and your essays due by 5, and.
White supremacy. White supremacy.
And I was like, oh my God, yes, because some of my friends and family were like, oh, are you okay? Is your family okay? And I was like, yeah, they're okay, but I'm still sad. These are my people who passed from this, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to grieve, especially because I think being Japanese American, I feel like in America, I'm not American enough, and in Japan, I'm not Japanese enough. And it's always about oh my God, you're so American, you're so American here, and it's oh my God, you're not really American.
Right, it's you don't really fit into either world.
Either country. I'm I don't really feel fully I belong. And so I think with this play I was trying to explore that as well, feeling like what is home for you, and do you create it for yourself or do you let other people create it for you?
So you were talking about like towing the line of like having like a queer love story, but like not that being the focus.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of queer love stories that I've seen on stage or that I've seen in movies and on TV is like always about how forbidden it is and like how bad it is that we're like gay and like together. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of stories that are not like that. Like Donnie's stuff is like, so beautiful, and so many queer artists don't have that be a thing. And it is a thing though. Like it is hard being gay and queer right now. And I think right now it's a lot better, but it's not like that in every city, in every state. So yeah, I was like, I wanted to explore a relationship where it wasn't about how what they were doing was so bad and like so shameful and awful, but like really beautiful and at the core of a relationship, versus like this is gay. It's like no, these are two people who are like in love with each other or like falling for each other.
And it's not centered around them coming out as well.
Yeah, not centered on them coming out. And I completely know that coming out is like a very difficult thing, and it happens all the time. And but I was just like, what does it mean to write about a story where it's not about coming out? Because I think in Wild Asian Rose I did kind of have Lumi, who's 16, who's kind of struggling with her identity as a kind of lesbian, queer girl who has feelings for her best friend, her female best friend, is like, and how her parents might take it, and that's very much a real thing in Asian, families, Asian communities.
At any age.
Really, and so I think both those stories should be kind of explored, and like both of it being kind of like forbidden or whatever, or like shameful for folks is like a very real experience, but also it can be really like celebratory and not so centered on homophobia.
And again, I think what's great about, like definitely, like those two stories should be able to live in the world without it like lessening the other. But I think the important pieces here is that like they are, in your stories, they're like Asian. And I think that's very rare to see still.
I don't know a lot of queer Asian representation, like on, like definitely not in movies and on television, and I've seen definitely a few of it on stage, like Reyes writes about it, and Diana's son has that in her play. But I want to see more.
And I think going back again to like fetishization, like in Asia, like it does exist. Like queer love stories do exist, but they exist in like these ways that like manga, right? That are kind of like catered to like younger girls who look at it in like sort of like a fantasy like way. And not like these like real human beings. And it's popular too in Thailand right now. There's a lot of like shows with gay love stories that's taking from like those little like I guess it's their version of mangas, but it's like these little novels. And so that's interesting too, to like address these issues. And thinking about audience again, it's like in an Asian audience, like this is still not even forbidden, but it's just like this weird. It's like done in a way that feels like not necessarily authentic, or like it's not done in like straight. Like straight relationships get to have like the whole spectrum, like all of it, and then with gay, it's like kind of like a fantasy versus like just the reality of a relationship, which is just tough. And voyeuristic too, like again. Like there's a level of voyeurism. It's like I'm watching these two queer people in like a way that I don't see them as whole. Totally. Okay, so that was a lot to talk about. So we'll end this interview with a little bit more lightness. I'm just gonna like kind of speed round questions at you. Cool. So what is your most recent obsession? Oh my God. Eating more vegetables. What is music or music? Thank You Next, Ariana Grande, or Daniel Caesar if you're looking for like kind of like sad music, because it's kind of it's last movie that you enjoyed watching? A Star Is Born. Don't judge me. Last play that you enjoyed seeing? What did it? Wild Goose Dreams at the Public. Go Peter Kim. Yes. Hi Peter. Hi Peter. Your most recent like clothing piece, like that you're obsessed with? This shirt. I got it like a month ago, but now I'm like, I love it. So, wear it every day. Yay. And what is one thing you cannot live without? Oh my God. Gluten-free bread. And what art, what kind of art inspires you?
What kind of art inspires me? I think unapologetic, really brave, and not giving a shit about what people think. Art. Yeah.
Favorite Lady Gaga song?
Just Dance. An original.
Yes, no, just, yes.
Yeah.
That is the right answer. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me. This was the very first episode of Artist Spotlight. Again, we were joined by Moriya. Is there anything you'd like to say to the Lark community?
Thanks for having me, and I keep coming back.
She never left.
I never left.
But thank you so much, and we will see you soon for another episode, maybe.
Thanks for watching Lark TV. Don't forget to subscribe and also donate. I am nothing without the Lark.